that they may be one, even as we are one. That's the amazing invitation and prayer Jesus prayed in John 17, verse 11. How did Jesus experience union with God? I want to explore that theme today, not theoretically, but experientially. A few months ago, a friend phoned me and invited me to do an overnight hike into a beautiful mountain range nearby. That evening, as I decided what to pack for this overnight tour, I checked the weather. I saw that it would be a clear evening, no rain, not much wind. And so I decided to not even take a tent, but simply take my sleeping bag. We met early the one morning, about 4 of us, and started on this wonderful adventure into the mountains. After a few hours, we came to a beautiful pool, just a wonderful experience. Swim in the natural streams, drink the mountain water. It was a wonderful experience of just exquisite beauty. But as the day goes on, your body starts feeling it, especially because we decided to not follow the actual map or the actual path that existed, but to travel up a gorge where it's quite possible that no one's gone up that gorge before, or if they did, there's no path up that gorge. It was very steep, very beautiful. And by the time we came to the top, we must have hiked for about 10 hours already. So we were exhausted. And it was nearing the evening now, and we needed to find a place to sleep. And at the top of the gorge, it wasn't suitable to overnight because it was very uneven, very rocky, and there wasn't any water source there. So we hiked for another 2 hours, and by this time, we were exhausted. We found a beautiful spot, lovely grass, even space to rest for the evening. We made a fire. Oh my goodness, how grateful you are for food and for something hot to drink after a trip like that. Later that evening, as I crawled into my sleeping bag, sharing my space with all the insects and other creatures, I had, if you are that exhausted, you become just so grateful for an opportunity to sit down. And so to lie down after you had a wonderful meal, I was just so grateful for that experience. And in that moment of gratitude, I became aware that I am sharing this experience with every blade of grass, with every insect around me, that same participation in the opportunity to live into the next moment. Every blade of grass soaking up the minerals and the water, every insect partaking of the abundance of resources that's available to it there. It became a common experience. Maybe it's because of such an elemental, such a basic experience of gratitude that I have the sustenance, I have the place of rest. I can continue living. Such a basic experience. But it's an experience that I suddenly became aware of sharing it with all of life, with all of creation. I'm reminded of how Jesus, in speaking about the presence of God, also refers to birds and flowers partaking of his Abba's provision. There was an awareness in Jesus as well that this experience of our Abba is not something that's exclusive to humanity. It's an experience that is shared by all of creation. Excuse me. As I crawl deeper into my sleeping bag, getting ready for the evening, lifting my eyes to the skies, and suddenly the Milky Way, the heavens, just came alive. Again, an experience of awe and wonder drew me into this awareness that this is an experience that is not unique to me. It's probably the oldest experience humanity has ever had, to lie beneath the stars, to wonder at its beauty, to be in awe at its vastness, to wonder what it means, and to begin telling stories about its possible meaning. That's an experience that's as old as humanity, and some of the most ancient poets have written about it. Now I'm reminded of, I think it's Psalms 19, which says, night to night pours forth speech. Day to day pours forth knowledge. Their voice is not heard, yet their speech, their message goes out throughout all the world. There's a message present in this cosmos. There's a story being told. And I was just overwhelmed in that moment that I am part of a story so much larger, so much bigger. An expansion started taking place. Now, today we have the privilege of modern cosmology and of scientific discoveries that gives us new language to articulate even better why we are connected to the stars, to the rest of creation. When 14 billion years ago this universe was flung into existence with very simple elements in gas forms, really, and energy spewing out a vast area. Eventually, these simple elements started drawing together and, in a sense, congealing, and it's the attraction and the gravity that caused them to produce friction, which eventually ignited and formed the first stars. And about 5 billion years ago, on the edge of one of these galaxies, the Milky Way, our galaxy, some of these ancient giant stars died in a spectacular supernova. And they spewed out their material, which they have cooked up over millions of years, because the first elements that were present within our universe did not include the more complex elements like iron or carbon, elements that are necessary for life. They first had to be cooked up in stars. These stars exploded, and a second generation star that was formed as this material came together again friction caused it to ignite, and our sun was born. And some of the excess material that wasn't involved in the formation of our sun congealed together and basically formed the planets of our solar system. So there are elements in your body that experienced the inside of stars. Wow. And so as I laid there, I became aware of being part of a story, part of an experience much larger, much older than myself. Part of our experience of union with God is losing the limitations and the boundaries of our own personal story. Part of this experience of participating in the consciousness of God means that I've got to let go of that sense of self that so limits my perspective. You know, that is not something weird. Jesus himself spoke about the fact that if you want to find yourself, your life, you've got to lose it. There's an aspect of losing the boundaries before you can participate in something larger than yourself. Maybe I'll just throw in another experience. I remember waking up one evening. I didn't know, was this a dream? And in that moment, I realized whatever this was, it's more than a dream because I could still experience it. And in this experience or dream that I had, I suddenly observed myself from a new perspective. I'm reminded of 2 Corinthians 3:18, where it speaks of us beholding Christ as in a mirror. What happens when you look into that mirror of Christ's face is that you suddenly become aware of a perspective beyond your own. You're not obsessed with what you see, but you're overwhelmed with the fact that you are seen. And so it was something to do with that inversion of perspectives where I suddenly saw myself dissolving. And it wasn't scary. It was liberating. And it was a cosmic perspective. I don't know. I don't quite have the words for these experiences, but I, in a sense, became part of everything. Maybe this is what Paul also experienced when he speaks about Christ in Colossians 1, and he says, in him all things consists. Christ is not Jesus' last name. Christ is the name we give for this presence in everything, this consciousness, this awareness in everything. And so as I kind of woke up from that experience, and I still felt this enormous expansion beyond our galaxy, even beyond our universe. It felt like the 14 billion years of existence was just a heartbeat in the consciousness of God. And for a moment, it felt like I participated in that consciousness. So part of our experience of union with God is an awareness and appreciation of a God who experiences everything with all of creation. And it means that I need to lose my small, limited experience to participate in that awareness, to participate in that experience. And so back to my overnight sleeping bag experience in the mountains, as I contemplated the stars, as I became aware of a joint experience with every blade of grass, with every insect, with every animal, with my companions around me, that somehow we can participate in the same underlying gratitude, that there is a presence in all of creation that is drawing us towards greater beauty, towards greater goodness, towards a greater awareness of our union with the one in whom we exist, the one in whom we live and move and have our being. We are so used to just living in our houses, living in our cars, living in our offices, that we sometimes lose touch with the fact that we were formed from dust. And that formation out of the elements of this earth, that's not an insult. That is a testimony to the enormous patience of a loving God who brewed up every element necessary to find form in your existence. Your person, your body carries within it billions of years of history, of experience, of God's patience, of God's anticipation for a being that can become aware of His presence, a being that can appreciate the diversity and the beauty of who He is. And so I just want to encourage you to nurture that experience, to maybe find a space in nature. Now, when Jesus speaks about prayer, He says, don't make it a performance. Don't just go and pray in your church or in the street corners, but go into your inner closet. And I don't really think He spoke about a closet in a house, because He's the same Jesus who said, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay His head. I think He spoke about nurturing this inner awareness, this awareness that can allow us to expand beyond the boundaries of your body, beyond the tiny, puny little stories that are the headline news today, and to again become aware that you are part of a much larger story, a story where the trajectory is towards greater consciousness, greater diversity, and greater union. Drawing us together. Some call it gravity, I just call it love. It is what draws us into a place of appreciation that we all share the same life. In Him we live, we move, we have our being. Father, I pray that they may be one, even as we are one.